On the 14th of May 1967, crowds gathered on a hill above the center of Liverpool for the consecration of a new Catholic cathedral. With its tent-like shape and luminous lantern tower, it was a boldly futuristic design and had risen in just 5 years. But the idea behind it had a far longer history. The desire to build a Catholic cathedral in the city stretched back more than a century, and beneath the modern structure lay the remains of an earlier attempt to achieve this ambition. Although large in its own right, the current building rests on one end of a massive crypt, made to bear the weight of a structure on an even grander scale. Conceived around 1930, this unrealized plan called for a vast classical cathedral of brick and granite, which would have dominated the skyline and rivaled the most impressive churches ever built before it. Unfortunately, war and spiraling costs ensured it would never be completed, leaving only the crypt as a tantalizing reminder of one of the greatest what-ifs in British architectural history. The story of how Liverpool came to need a Catholic cathedral can be traced back to the mid-19th century. The Great Irish Famine of the 1840s brought waves of immigrants to the city and dramatically swelled its Catholic population. Then, in 1850, the Pope restored England's church hierarchy. As a result of this, Liverpool found itself the seat of a new diocese, and almost immediately, ambitions turned to building something worthy of it. The first commission to design a Catholic cathedral for Liverpool was entrusted in 1853 to Edward Pugin, son of Augustus Pugin, the great champion of the Gothic revival. His design was a bold one, dominated by a massive central steeple, and within 3 years a usable portion had already been completed in the form of a lady chapel. But the diocese's attention soon turned to more pressing needs like parish churches, schools and orphanages, and the completion of the cathedral was quietly shelved. It would be nearly 7 decades before the idea gathered serious momentum again. By the 1920s, Liverpool had grown into a major city, and its Catholic community had grown with it. Fundraising for a cathedral resumed under Archbishop Keating, and by the time Richard Downey was appointed Archbishop in 1928, over £122,000 had already been collected. Downey was a forceful, charismatic figure, and Catholics rallied to his leadership with unparalleled enthusiasm. Proof of this was seen within a year of his appointment, when a crowd of 400,000 assembled to mark the centenary of Catholic emancipation. The Archbishop read the moment clearly. The time had come to build. For the cathedral's design, Downey turned to Sir Edwin Lutyens, by then the most celebrated British architect of his generation. Lutyens had made his name with arts and crafts country houses rooted in the English countryside before moving toward a more monumental, classical style. His later portfolio included the Cenotaph on Whitehall, a memorial to the fallen of the First World War, and the Viceroy's residence in New Delhi, where he seamlessly combined English Baroque with traditional Indian architecture. Liverpool Cathedral, however, would become his last great work, a project without compromise that consumed his final years. What Lutyens proposed was extraordinary. The cathedral was to be built in pinkish-brown brick relieved by bands of granite, and would rise from a site on Brownlow Hill to a total height of 520 feet. That would have made it taller than anything else on the Liverpool skyline, dwarfing even the Anglican cathedral then under construction at the other end of Hope Street. In fact, the building's footprint of 216,000 square feet placed it among the largest churches in the world, second only to St. Peter's in Rome. And in one respect, it was set to surpass even that. At 168 feet in diameter, Lucian's dome would have been unmatched, exceeding both the Roman Basilica and Brunelleschi's famous dome in Florence by a comfortable margin. Yet, for all its immensity, the cathedral was designed to hold only around 5,000 worshippers, a surprisingly modest congregation for a building of such ambition. Nonetheless, the interior promised to be breathtaking. The nave, soaring 160 feet, would have conveyed an overwhelming impression of height, despite, as the architect himself noted, being wider than that of St. Paul's. Another defining feature was the narthex, or Great Entrance Hall. Lutyens envisioned it as a space open day and night, and kept warm for the poor and destitute who might sleep there and wake always in sight of a distant altar. When the plans were presented to Downey and his bishops, they were so won over that they declared him the best Catholic of all, despite being Anglican. Lutyens was actually not a particularly religious person himself, at least not in the conventional sense, but he had a deep sense of the spiritual dimension of architecture, and the cathedral is a good example of this. From the very beginning, the building had been conceived in solid geometrical relationships, a giant sculpture of arches, vaults, and tunnels arranged according to precise proportional systems. The same monumental language had already appeared on a smaller scale at his memorial to the missing at Thiepval, and exemplified what he called elemental architecture. Lutyens explained his fascination with this concept in a letter, writing that, quote, "The intricacies of proportions and recurring ratios are without end, and admit some fourth dimension which cannot be expressed. As in the Hindu faith, where the name of God may not be mentioned, save perhaps under the mystic monosyllable of Om." Downey and Lutyens visited Rome together in 1933, where the design received a papal blessing. The foundation stone was laid on Whit Monday, the 5th of June 1933, and work soon began in earnest on the crypt, a series of complex vaulted spaces intended to anchor the vast structure above. The same year, a huge and intricately detailed architectural model, one of the most elaborate ever made in Britain, was displayed at the Royal Academy, giving the public their first real sense of the scale of the ambition. Then came the war. Construction halted in 1941, and the unfinished crypt found a new, unglamorous purpose as an air raid shelter. When building resumed afterwards, the financial reality had shifted dramatically. Lutyens' original estimate of £3 million had ballooned to 27 million, a sum so far beyond reach that even the most committed supporters had to accept the original design was finished. Lutyens himself had died in 1944, and with him went the project's driving creative force. The grand superstructure, which would have been visible from miles around, would never rise above the hilltop. One further attempt was made to salvage something from the wreckage of the plan. In 1953, Adrian Gilbert Scott, the brother of the Anglican Cathedral's architect, was brought in to produce a scaled-down version that retained Lutyens' Great Dome, but at a fraction of the cost. However, the result met with heavy criticism and was abandoned before a single stone could be laid. It fell to Archbishop Heenan, who succeeded to Liverpool in 1957, to to accept that a completely fresh start was the only way forward. He threw the commission open to international competition. Of 300 entries, the winner was Sir Frederick Gibbard, whose radically different circular design was completed in 1967. What remains of Lutyens' vision is the crypt itself, now accessible beneath the floor of Gibbard's cathedral. This structure still conveys the scale of what he had planned. Its enormous granite dressings, hewn from quarries in Cornwall, and the 6 million deep purple bricks that line its vaulted passageways were chosen to bear a weight that never came. But more than just a glimpse at what might have been, it's a beautiful and atmospheric space in its own right. Many have come to regard it as Liverpool's third cathedral, a secret spiritual place, and one of the finest architectural spaces in the city.
Where?